We are honored to have our chairperson and former deputy president of the country, Ms. Baleka Mbete. We have the privilege of having a guest of honor in and amongst us, someone who will be introduced later, but suffice to say, he is referred to as Mzee Butiku, and just upon discovery as to, first of all, when I saw his name, I called him Mzee, because that's how most of us South Africans would pronounce it, until the kindness of the chairperson said, this is Mzee. And Mzee is a reference that is not end easily, but is a very esteemed a reference to a people that society recognizes for the role that they have performed. When he's introduced, you will get to know who he is, but he comes from Tanzania. Welcome, sir. We also welcome all other esteemed guests. For us, all of you are esteemed guests in this organization. The fact that they call me Ambassador Rakwena, I'm going to try and move away from the drudgery of protocols, like everybody feeling that they must say, you're this and this and this, which takes 15 minutes. So this is the very last time that I would be saying these things, because I also respect the fact that we are in a body of academics, and they do not have time for such niceties at times. Of course, in my world, we don't call them niceties. Yeah? I tried to waste a little bit of time because I thought I would avoid us getting into someone's house without them formally welcoming us. So, but I could only go this far. Perhaps I could take a chance. Let's deal with generalities. There is, just by way of announcements, for, what do they call it, convenience facilities, out the door, straight ahead, there's both, you would be able to find those facilities. As for cell phones, they are allowed, but they are allowed only on a, is it called aircraft mode or silence? Is it aircraft? You can tell that I haven't been up in the sky for a long time, yeah? Eddie would know, yeah? Air mode or silence, please, so that we don't disturb the presentations. Other things is that there are going to be several changes to the program, and I hope you will accept the fluidity thereof. There's been some or two challenges that some other presenters have had. And lastly, but I'll navigate you through those particular changes as we go on. For now, we seem, except for our host who is still coming to welcome us, we seem to be on check in terms of the program that is in front of you. I'd like to take the opportunity now to call on the convener of this historic second symposium that is being hosted here, Professor Eddie Maloka, who will speak to the issues of substance about why we are gathered here and what his expectations and objectives from you would be for the entire day. Professor Maloka, please.
Thank you, Ambassador, our overall convener, and also our leader here at NaLHISA. And of course, let me stand on the protocols that you have proposed. I'm also happy to see Mzee here. We last saw you in Kampala. Thank you to see you. I think it's from the Nyerere Foundation. Thank you very much, and Madam Beth. And I apologize. I'm told I was late because time was up. But we stay in Kempton Park. Trying to drive from Kempton Park today, don't do it because the roads are closed. So I had to go box back and all of that to get here. Unfortunately, it took us forever. I've been out of my home quite early. So I apologize if I inconvenience anybody or other colleagues. I know Mbazara called me, but I was still stuck in that situation. Colleagues, this is our second meeting. The first meeting, I think it was virtual. And at that time, we didn't see each other's faces. So now is for the first time we meet physically. So we apologize that it took us this long to reconvene us. And how this came about is because the leadership at NaLHISA came to us and said, why don't you and historians and archivists constitute yourself into some sort of a network to support the NaLHISA effort? So that's how we met for the first time. And I think the two issues that came out the first time was the issue of duplication. To say, let's avoid duplication. NaLHISA should avoid duplication. So we then agreed that we will do an assessment of what exists already. Because I remember some colleagues were saying at that time that we've got museums that are not being utilized, are not being patronized. We've got a number of heritage sites that are not being exploited by our people. Thank you very much, the host. Thank you very much. Welcome to your own venue. Do I continue or I give him the floor?
After you.
Oh, okay. So that was the main issue, and we did undertake that exercise and to look at the state and the status of the heritage sector in South Africa, and then to then say, where can NaLHISA contribute? And the methodology of NaLHISA is also very different from the arts councils, because the arts councils, they are statutory and they operate quite differently. So NaLHISA is supposed to be more like, you could say, partly an institute, but also a movement of some sort around heritage. So it's a little bit a different approach, and we can talk about that today. But there was a strong emphasis on avoid duplication and take into account the fact that in South Africa, South Africans don't read books, South Africans don't go to museums, and so on and so on. So you could create a white elephant. So that's what was raised at the first meeting. The second point that was raised was sustainability. And I think it's still an issue even up to today. NaLHISA has a small permanent staff or full-time staff, but the issue of sustainability is still there. The arts councils, you get taxpayers' money. So your sustainability issues are quite different. But this is an issue that was raised about how you deal with the sustainability of the NaLHISA project. So you'll hear from Madam Bette when she talks later how NaLHISA is addressing these issues. So for today, we intend to take this conversation forward around from what we started before. So we have brought in some colleagues who were here at the last meeting. Others will be attending here for the first time. And I also want, of course, I don't want to overstep my mandate, but maybe take this opportunity. I'm sure Mbazara will still thank Professor Landsberg properly later, but really to thank Professor Landsberg for hosting us, for providing us with the refreshments, and also making this venue available to us. And to say that by having this kind of relationship with his center, with the Department of Political Science, and then his chair here, I think it will also help us, and we hope that it will not be just an event, but it will be a relationship that will be able to sustain over time. So, Mr. Chairman, we have been working on this, and I see that we have tried to zoom in into more specific things, and I think that the discussion is there. We are hoping that out of this, because the first one was a brainstorming, this one we are hoping that in the course of the day, we should be able to have some sense of the next steps that are more concrete, not general. The last time these were just general observations. So today, if we can try to zoom in into concrete actions, concrete steps, what is it that we can do? And then can we identify one or two flagship things, projects we can start with? So there are already some ideas there. And we can also, I'm sure, in the course of today, also learn from the Nyerere Foundation because they are trying something similar. And in our case, we have all these liberation movements, their archives, their heritage together. How do we take it forward? How do we utilize that? And so on. So I don't know, Mr. Chairman, I've done what you wanted me to say, but it's just to introduce the matter to say that today, if we can try to be more concrete, we would have wanted to have this meeting over 2 days, but we thought that the most practical solution at the moment is just for us to meet for today. So let's try to make the best of today. Madam Beto will set the scene, and then there will be some panel discussion, but towards the end of the day, under the leadership of our convener, Ambassador Mbulelo Rakwena, we should be able to have some concrete steps in terms of as to what next, but concretely, more than the general observations we concluded with the last time. So I'll leave it there, and I don't know what you want me to do. I hand back the chair to the chair, and thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. I was hoping. Professor Chris Landsbeck, thank you very much, Professor Maluka. Thank you very much for illustrating what we need to go through. Prof, if I could invite you, please. We've been very rude to proceed without a formal welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. So, Your Excellency, former Deputy President Mbete, and I would also like to extend a particular warm welcome to Mr. Mzee Butiku. We've met before at the Nyerere Foundation in my favorite country on the continent, other than my own, of course, Tanzania. Welcome. Welcome to all our guests from throughout the region, the continent. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you to the University of Johannesburg. So my name is Chris Landsbeck. As you've heard, I head up two institutions, two entities. I hold the South African chair in African diplomacy and foreign policy, as well as the Center for African Diplomacy and Leadership. We are really privileged to partner with the National Liberation Heritage Institute of South Africa, and to be part of a group that will be focusing on a pivotal issue, a neglected issue. I was not surprised by the comments, Chair, made by Professor Maloka in saying that in our own country we have young generations growing up without much appreciation of the histories of the liberation histories of African states in general. Even our own country's liberation history in particular. So on behalf of my colleagues, Professor Lisa Otto is here, my deputy chair, she's here, Dr. Sylvester Sitole, Mr. Kwezi Nibisa, and of course that hard-working young man, Sandy Molloy. I want to extend our welcome. I can only underscore what Professor Maloka said, that we would like to see and be party to a relationship and a partnership that will result in tangible, concrete outcomes. And just trying to understand the young generation, they've opened up spaces and opportunities for us. We can come up with new methodologies. We can use new methods archival material, oral history, new theories, new genres, in order to record the important liberation struggles and the sacrifices that so many have made for South Africa's liberation and the liberation of many other countries in our continent that suffered under the terrible yokes of colonial and imperial domination. So once again, on behalf of the University of Johannesburg and the SARCI chair, as well as CEDL, the Center for African Diplomacy and Leadership, you are most welcome. We are engaged in our approach. We are unapologetic in doing critical, engaging scholarship and research. We don't hesitate to engage government, state actors, liberation movements. We pride ourselves on that at the University of Johannesburg. And just to say two final things, maybe some advertorial. One of the things I'd like us to engage on, Chair, as we forge this partnership, is we now also have a very proud UJ Press, University of Johannesburg Press, and that press is not averse to entering into partnership with other presses and publishing houses to bring out literature and publishing books, materials, and bring them out in all 11 languages, including Swahili as a language, French, and so on. So path-breaking. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we are now ranked the #2 university in the continent of Africa. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Without the medical school, I should say.
Thank you, Professor Landsbeck. Mandla Suluane says he'll be in touch with you. And you'll know why. But thank you very much. We're feeling very, very welcomed. Before I call on the chairperson of NaLHISA, Her Excellency Ms. Balekambete, may I just also indicate that we are joined by participants online. And some of those...
Recording in progress.
Huh? What did I do now? Okay. Some of those, one of the things that we've done is we have placed an emphasis on being visited by all components of the liberation movement to this particular event. So I wish to recognize all of them, the PAC, the ANC. I believe Mesisulu is on line, the AZAPO, the BCMU. We are also fraternized by the IFP that is here physically. We are fraternized by all other important sectors and players of our society. So we've taken deliberate effort to make sure that we are as inclusive as possible. We were expecting about 79 participants. We're getting there by 11 o'clock. We will be there. Madam Baleka, we've surpassed 50% of that expectation at this stage. So we are happy with where we are. I am going to, just in addition to what Mr. Maloka said, because I want to be able to leave the questions of moderating to the moderator and not be the program director and moderator at the same time. So let me quickly add that one of the emphasis that we decided about this seminar, further to what Professor Maloka has said, is that we should be careful not to degenerate it into a talk shop, but rather produce an outcome whose purpose it will be to help NaLHISA become the desirable institution that it wants to be, creating a strong portal that will be able to reflect on the liberation heritage of our struggle and profile it in a manner that is, as per the principle of the organization, non-sectarian and reflective of the truth as much as possible. One of the members of the council that is here is Professor Seth Cooper, and he has insisted to me that we must make sure that we are as historically accurate as we possibly can be as we engage with each other around these particular matters. But the other thing that we thought we would do is that before we run off too far and our identity is not understood, is to try and make sure that we share with you the architecture and policy of NaLHISA in as far as archiving is concerned. So out of this discussion, we are hoping that you will enrich that part of an expectation on our part, so that as we go forward as an organization, we do so with the confidence that we would not have constructed something purely that suited our purposes, but that enjoyed the overall contribution of those that are in the sector, those that are students of history, those that whose I said silence, ne? Sorry, that was a cue on my part to finish talking. So I have the pleasure now of inviting Her Excellency Mebaleka to formally receive us. Thank you very much. Mebaleka.
Now, Ambassador Rakwena, you've said things here about the people who own and normally run and operate in this space, that they don't like salutations. So apologies ahead, Chris, on that score. I wish to especially welcome Mzee Butiku and say, Karibu nyumbani, because this is your home. So by Karibu nyumbani, we're simply saying welcome home. When we came to South Africa after decades of struggle, one of the people who followed us was Mzee Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, and he came to Cape Town to talk to us and look at us when we are now members of parliament and not those people that he had to receive and host and, of course, embrace as Africans and his responsibility at that time. So it is with that depth of appreciation that we welcome you here, Mzee Butiku. I must recognize Professor Chris Landsberg, Professor Seth Cooper, the presidents of various political formations that are represented here today. I also have very important people in the audience who are special relatives of mine because their son married our child. So the Zides are here and I welcome them formally. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. To stop myself from carrying on and on, I can talk very long about NaLHISA, the journey before the creation of NaLHISA, what the uphill battles have been since we met for the first time, in January 2020. I have to say this because I take these things for granted, so I might have forgotten to mention it in my written remarks, which I have prepared just to contain myself. That the archives of a lot of the organizations that are collaborating in NaLHISA are housed at the National Heritage and Cultural Studies Center. Uputoza. She works there. She's Dr. Tozama April. She's a senior curator there, which is where the archives of the liberation struggle are hosted by the University of Fort Hare. Having been taken there by the leaders of the formations that had emerged from struggle under the leadership of President Nelson Mandela at the time. So I think that's a very important fact to be noted. Of course, the archives are scattered all over. Scattered archives of the struggle, stories and actual material are at institutions all over South Africa, but also all over the globe. And part of the challenge for NaLHISA is that we still have to get many of those archives back onto the same portal under NaLHISA. The theme of being grounded has emerged strongly in my mind as I'm ordering my thoughts for the opening remarks for the NaLHISA Symposium. In the 3.5 years of our existence, this is the second time we meet in this fashion. First symposium was, of course, in February 2021. I must mention the important occasion of our media launch of the 22nd July 2022. The notion of us humans constantly needing this pillar, this being grounded in our lives. This need to be in a space in which you are comfortable, where you belong, where you feel you belong, is real. As we grow up, as we grew up as children in the townships all over the place, we would visit a home away from the city center once a year, maybe in December, where your parents originally came from, usually called Kaya Kulu, great home. So there's home here in the township, but Kaya Kulu is somewhere out there in the Bundus. But that's where you feel grounded. Even the quality of sleep when you are there is different. It's qualitatively better, deeper, and much more healing to you. You feel more grounded. We need this for purposes of getting, as human beings, re-energized to get back to the hectic spaces that we normally live in. Mentally, emotionally, physically, and intellectually, it is a necessity to have this experience of being with your own people and reawakening an ease in your whole being, which you might not have been conscious existed. It's a need for you to be you. I remember observing this with a Cuban doctor, a black doctor in Havana. We were at the house of our ambassador there, Tenjiwe Mtinso. At the end, before I left, I was leaving the following day, and she had a dinner, and this particular guy was with us that night. Just music and dancing. And that man said it was his first experience ever of being with only black people. Now, I know we're not all black, and it's nothing against anyone who's not black. But it is a reality of life. This man said to us that night, it was a particularly enriching feeling he had never felt in his life. He was already in his 50s. He says it's the very first time he's only with Africans or people of black or of African descendants. On the 10th May this year, NaLHISA gathered with 70 young South Africans at a liberation struggle shrine called Freedom Park in Pretoria. The most critical features of Freedom Park are two. A place called Isivivane, and the second one is the Wall of Names. Thousands of names of people whose lives were sacrificed all over the globe under all manner of circumstances for freedom. Their lives were lost in the struggle for humanity to be free. This is where we get reunited with the spirits and memories of those whose lives were sacrificed for our freedom. One of the lessons we learned that day was how much young South Africans yearn to know about the past, about the history of their country. Most of them say they never hear about these things. So I don't know whether Professor Ndlovu is here, Sfiso, because I know that he had been tasked with other South Africans to be a subcommittee to look at this issue of the teaching of history to our children, which feels like it's such an uphill battle for us to be convinced collectively and to simply do it. And we learned when we were out there in the world that actually it's an uphill battle all over in the formerly colonized world. The teaching of history is discouraged, because history is going to reveal things that are uncomfortable for some of those that continue to believe they have the power to tell us what to think, what to believe, or what not to. After 29 years of our democratic dispensation, it was the first time I listened to a profound unpacking of what I recognized that day was African spirituality. And I, that day, began to embark on the path to being better grounded. The CEO of Freedom Park explains to us what is Isivivane all about. I don't know if you know Isivivane. But it's a place where you have, in the one in Freedom Park has 10 rocks, one rock from each province. And the 10th one represents the national level. Then there are features there that represents the spirits of people that joined us in the anti-apartheid struggle, internationally, and in particular from the Americas, including people from the indigenous community of the United States. you will find that there's always steam coming out there. And it represents ukushiswa kwempepho. Don't know ukuthi ngiyikhumshe njani lo nto Mbulelo. Yes, the burning of incense. There's continuous steam coming out. So, when you are there, you actually feel grounded. I don't know whether you can explain it in academic terms, whatever, but you feel grounded. In this regard, it is relevant to recall an occasion in 2011 when leaders of organizations emerging from the liberation struggle had gathered at the Constitution Hill. The purpose was to fittingly mark the launch of the centenary program of the ANC. The ANC was just approaching 2012. So, Botera were there and other people, leaders from different political formations at the Constitution Hill. And we had slaughtered. Because that's what we do as Africans, we slaughter. So on that occasion, koklatjwe inkomo. The purpose was, of course, as I've already said, and on that occasion, the presidents of the organizations that were represented there who had gravitated to a particular table. They ended up at a different table with the president of the ANC, reached an understanding. They all agreed that such a gathering had been long overdue. But secondly, that kind of gathering needed to be regularized in future. Of course, we're talking about something that happened more than 10 years ago. I don't know whether they've ever gathered again. It was back in 2011. So the opportunity of these remarks enables me to share with you all, comrades, the official values of NaLHISA. Having had the first meeting on the 31st January 2020, where about 20-something of us met, and of course Mbulelo was chairing us, as usual, because he does it very well. He does it as if he was born to chair. Having had that meeting, we then later in that year, in November, held a strategic workshop based on our deed of trust. And a lady here who's since become our strategic advisor to the trustees of NaLHISA, Nobuhle Mazolo, was the one who conducted that strategic workshop. And we came out with 7 values. And I'll only focus on 2. Let me go through them. They are liberation, the first one. 2, integrity. 3, respect. 4, knowledge. 5, work ethic. Because abantu bakithi baqalile ukwenqena. people are getting lazier and lazier. Things must happen for me doing nothing though. I must just get as easily as possible. The sixth value is the one of leadership. And seventh, partnership. And I want to highlight the first two. Liberation is what a lot of our people's blood flowed for us to attain. So freedom was not free. The second one, the integrity of our African identity, our pride and dignity. These must be sustained into the future through the young leaders of today. And I want to emphasize here, Mbulelo, maybe you might want to put the diagram that shows NaLHISA's programs and the centrality of youth and young people, to whom we owe it as the generation that actually were involved in struggle. We have to hand that history over to the younger generations because they are the leaders of the future. So the last point is to propose to this collective that we should mold NaLHISA into a place of grounding. Let us construct a Kaya Kulu out of this liberation heritage zone. Let us rise to the challenge of preserving and celebrating the courage of our people. And I'd like to emphasize the urgency of doing this because the depth of damage to us over the centuries means the matter cannot be overemphasized. And I do, again, something that is done only in rallies, to say, long live NaLHISA.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.